Happy New Year, everyone. You look a year wiser. So I have solved it. I have solved the problem that bugged my automations for so long. I have solved the problem that I went online to Perplexity, to ChatGPT, to Claude, whatever AI you think of, to find a solution, and it did not solve it for me. I have found finally a solution. So if that tells you anything, well, you still need a human brain behind the AI to solve problems. So you know what I'm talking about if you did enough automations. So you have certain APIs running into your automation, and those make requests that go to servers that take more time. And based on the platform that you're using, you hit that time limit or timeout limit, which is 38, 39, or 40 seconds, depending on the platform. You get an error. It stops the whole automation in its place. And it's something that probably drives you crazy every time because you have to go in, trying to find a solution. Usually you go down the route of finding some error handling situation where it actually repeats that request. And even then, many times it will fail. Because as we do more things with AI, as we do more API calls to AI services, we are more and more using heavier models or things that take a little bit more time. And clearly, it's not that easy for these platforms like Zapier or Make.com to actually increase that timeout limit. So we keep facing those errors. It stops our automation. There's no solution I found online. If you go and search for it, you're going to find many discussion boards on Make, Zapier, Reddit, whatever platform you're thinking of. I guarantee you there's a conversation happening or multiple conversations around timeout, people screaming for a solution, begging the platforms to do something about it, and no practical solution is offered by anyone. Well, here I am, the non-coder, non-developer, content creator, part-time father, part-time executive in a corporate. I found a solution. And what we will do today is I'm going to show you that solution. I'm going to even give you a glimpse of what people talk about when it comes to the problem, actually. Show you that solution, show you how it works, then show you how you can actually fork the solution because there's code behind it and it's easy. Hopefully it's easy. How you can fork that solution and run it for yourself so you can yourself actually avoid and solve the timeout issue once and forever. But the most important part, and I'm going to keep that till the end to keep you hyped there, is how do I create something like that and what I learned from putting all of this together. I will give you that prompt that drove 90% of the job to happen from the first shot. After that, it took me back and forth like an hour or so or a couple of hours with the AI models on Replit to build it. But I will give you my tips and tricks on how to really do something like that and get highest probability possible in getting it to work. So hey, if you're one of the community who's probably one more year older, but one more year wiser, thank you for watching this. If you're not, welcome to the community. I hope you find value in this video. Consider clicking that subscribe button. It's for free. And with this, let's just get started.
Subscribe to Daddy's channel. The mic.
So believe me, I mean, if you didn't face that problem, probably you have simple automations. It's good to know about the solution or potential for a solution that I genuinely, personally, never found someone coming up with this solution ever or giving the way to solve it or even the tools to solve it like I will do for you today. So if you go online and just search timeout error space any platform, you will find tens and tens of discussion boards talking about this, people showing the error, some people having responses, oh, you have to error handle it, you have to try again, you have to, maybe it's something with the server, there's no solution. I mean, it's really sad when you look at it. So many people, and I made that kind of feedback to one of the platforms, telling them customers are asking for it everywhere online. I am asking for it. So many people are asking for it. Maybe it is something that you should try to solve. Now, I think from a platform perspective, changing the timeout limit on their back end is something much more complex than it looks from us, from the user perspective, from our side. So they never actually came up with something else. Now, the way I solved it, in my mind, any platform can do such kind of tool or facility, and they provide it for their users to solve it. The solution is not there. Please tell me if someone has another solution. I couldn't find it, so I solved it for myself. Thanks for the era of AI, and someone like me can do something like this. So even, looking at Make here, you'll find many posts around the same, not even a single solution. And what you usually do to address this in something like Zapier or other platforms is that you have to error handle it. So if you see this automation, it becomes big and heavy and complex with so many scenarios and so many retries. And even then, in many cases, it doesn't work, because on the services that you're sending requests to, it's getting more complex. It's taking more time to get a response, even with the things that were always something you'd expect to operate smoothly, like Perplexity. Recently, actually, the idea came to me when I started getting those timeout errors from Perplexity. So it's getting heavier, it's getting better as a service, Perplexity. But at the same time, it takes more time sometimes to process based on sometimes the load that their servers is having from many users, or simply you send it a complex kind of prompt or a long prompt, it will take it more than the average time to process it, depending on the model. So it takes time to get the response. And if you're doing it on Zapier or Make, you're going to hit an error. And what I did, the solution I will give you today, took my automation. So this is the old automation before my solution. This is the new one. So you can see there is nothing. It's just action behind action just to do a great automation. And this is an amazing one. I did a video about it, by the way, but this is like on steroids. So this is where I just put an idea in Notion. I get a script at the end of it based on research, based on so many things that happen online and offline. I just made it much better than the last time I did a video on it. So if you're interested, write me a comment in the comment section. I can give you the blueprint for this one. It's one of the best automations I have and I use. So I have no error handling. It's running for a week or so now with zero issues, regardless. And I know it will not have issues unless, something else comes up. But when it comes to timeout, I know the solution I made for this problem will address it. Like, the probability of this happening again as an error of timeout is nearly zero based on the solution, at least from what I see. So this is what we're going to cover today. This is what I'm going to give you today. So this is the goal. This is what we want to achieve here on our video. I want to give you that tool that will get you this smooth automation where you do not worry about any timeout error. It has a cost, which is more tasks, and I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so before I give you the solution, let me explain the problem. And this could be something that some of you who are not facing the problem don't understand, or you might already know it. It doesn't hurt for me to repeat it. Maybe you learn something new, or you just confirm your understanding, or you can write a comment in the comment section if you think I'm wrong in my understanding. So what we do in our automations when we are using a third-party service, we basically send an input, basically the request, a post, or whatever type of request that we send. It has headers, parameters, it has a JSON body. It goes to that service. The platform or the server you're sending the request to will run it. Now, this is running on the platform. So let's say it's Zapier or Make. So Zapier will send that request, and it will have a timeout limit of 39 seconds, I can say, for Zapier. I don't know for Make. I think it's 40 seconds for Make, so it's pretty much the same. And it will wait for a response. If the response from the server doesn't come in 39 or 40 seconds, you get the error. If it comes before that, you get the output, which is the answer or the piece of information you are looking for. This is the problem, is there's no way to go around, at least before this solution, to go around this 39-second limitation. And it's increasing. Like, if I can measure the times I get this timeout error, it's clearly increasing with time, because these kind of AI-based API services, which we're using more and more, they are taking on average more and more time for processing information. Again, depending on the type of query you're sending to that request or that API service that you're dealing with. Now, how did I solve it? Well, I had to create an application to solve this, a back-end application of my own, so I can use it as an intermediary to address or go around this timeout limit. And this is how I solved it. So let me scroll down, and this is my fix. Let me a little bit zoom out. Okay, so this should be clear. So the fix and the idea behind the fix was actually that I send all of the API requests to my own endpoint, and it's a kind of a proxy endpoint or intermediary endpoint, you can call it. So rather than, let's say we're dealing with Perplexity. So in the previous setup, I'll send the request directly to Perplexity and I wait for a response. And I hope for the best outcome to have the response within 39 or 40 seconds. Here it's different. So here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send the request to my own application that I created and I published, I deployed. And once I send that request, and it will have the Perplexity, for example, request body, exactly as it's designed by Perplexity. What this will do, it will do two things. First thing, and in a second, it will respond to me with an ID or a UUID, basically a database ID of a record. What it will do, it will tell me, okay, this is your record for this request. And in the back end of my application, it will send an API call to Perplexity, let it wait as much as it needs. If that fails, even within the back end, so even I have error handling with that within the application, it can go and retry 3 times, okay? Once it gets the API response from Perplexity, it will go and store it for the same record with the UUID, or basically the record ID. So it will store that record in the database under this ID. Then I will, on my automation, I will send the first request, get an ID, and then I'll put a delay step. I wait, let's say, for 3 minutes. And after that, I send another request, which is very simple. It's a request with some headers to authenticate my application, and it has the ID in it. Once I send it, the ID, what the application will do, it will go to the database, find what it got from Perplexity, which was stored in the database in the back end while this is running, and then send me back that response. This way, the waiting time is happening on my application and not on the Zapier or Make or whatever platform you are using. So I can easily, for a small application that I create, control the timeout, which you need. It's a necessary thing to have in an application so it doesn't run forever and you pay lots of money. So I made it 3 minutes for my application for now. Maybe in the future I'll increase it. But for now, 3 minutes I think is more than enough for 99% of the use cases I have. So I made it for 3 minutes. It will go run with Perplexity and whatever service for up to 3 minutes, get the response. If it's an error, it will retry until it gets the actual response. So even if Perplexity server gives me an error because of being busy, it will try 2 more times. It will get that response, store it in the database. And then when I send the second request telling it, hey, can you give me what you stored for this ID? I will get that data. And it works like a clock. I didn't have a single timeout error since I started using this model. So let's go to the solution now. So it is simple. It's an application. Well, not that simple, but it's an application that I built through the Replit agent and Replit assistant. And I didn't just make it code in the back end, something boring. I actually made it a scalable application for me, with certain security measures even. So let me show you on the actual web browser how it looks, and then I'll go back. I will not go over the code. I'll actually just tell you how to fork it and how to run it. So if I go to the browser, this is how my application looks. This is just one access to go in and build things into that application. For me here, I put the password, which is the same as the API key for this application endpoint. So the endpoint that we created for ourselves, not the service endpoint. So I made it here just to make it easier. I made it as test. And with this, we can log in. And once we log in, this is the user interface. And it's very simple. You have the dashboard, which is showing on the screen now. We have a button where we can add a new endpoint. So you can add as much as you want. So we have Perplexity now. We can add more and more and more services. So you can add something like a scraping service or something else that you're using and you're getting that timeout error from. And also here you have a logout button. If you click it, you'll go back to the original screen we were at to enter the password to go back in. And even you can set the API key from the interface itself. So if I click the key here, you can see it's test, and you can change it here and hit save, and it will update. So you can even, for your security, if you want to update the API key, you can directly update it from the user interface. And it is very simple. What you do here is you add your, what I call the original endpoints, the endpoints that you're going to use for your service. So the way to do that is you hit new endpoint, and you have to give it a code name. The code name will be necessary to differentiate this endpoint from any other endpoint within the dashboard that you have when you send the request to this application. Okay, so for example, we have already on the dashboard, we have Perplexity, and it's called Perplexity. And the way I will send the first request to this, and I'll show you on Postman how that works, is I'll send a request to my URL of the application. So if you deploy it on Replit, you'll take that application URL, you'll put a backslash, and after that, you'll put Perplexity. Once you send an API request to that URL, it's a post request, you will get back that ID that we talked about, okay? It could be something else. Let's say it could be a scraper. So you'll have the same application URL backslash scraper. Whatever code name you give it, this is your variable that you decide which API service you want to access through this application. And let me show you, you can edit it as well, which is really great if you want to update something, change an API key. But if you hit edit here, you can see all the details. So I have the code name Perplexity. You have the original API-based URL. So this is the well-known API endpoint for Perplexity, which is api.perplexity.ai /chat/completions, okay? You select the method, and then you put the original headers. So these are the headers for me for Perplexity, including the authorization. So this is the Perplexity API key. I will delete this after the video, so don't try to actually take it off the video, but you have to put it here. Okay, this is something that will be always replicated in the request that the application will make in the back end when you send it a request to use Perplexity. And then you put the body. If there's parameters, you can add the parameters here, and then you have to put the body. And the body is just an example body, something that you put to test. Whenever you send a request, so let's say you're using the /Perplexity, when you send the application's endpoint, you always use the same body that should be used for your original API service. So let's say I'm sending Perplexity, I'll send the structure that Perplexity accepts. I'm sending a scraper, I'll use whatever body JSON format that service accepts, because what this app will do, it will simply take the body from the request and plug it within this request using everything as a standard you see here, including the header, the method, the base URL, and then do the running of that API call in the back end. So this is only for an example, because once you have that, you can go back to the dashboard, and whatever services you add, you have to make sure that it is working within the application. So let's hit test here, and we'll wait for a second, and we should get a response. So you can see here, it just pops out. This is a response from Perplexity. So this is the citation here. You can see Fox News. So I'm asking what's the news today, CBS News, ABC News. And then you can see the content, which has the actual text that is the response that you look for from Perplexity. And this is in JSON format. So if you're doing this on Zapier, Make, whatever platform you're using, you can actually use these objects. So you can use only the content, you can use the citation, whatever you want. So now we know it's working, and we can actually go to Postman and test it. So let's go to Postman. I'll actually do it step by step for you to get the idea of how to use it. And what we do is very simple. So let me hit edit. So we might need the body here. So now we can go to Postman and test how this works. First thing we need is the URL. And here again, we now communicate with our own application URL endpoint. We're not dealing with Perplexity directly. The application will do that for us. So let's go to the application here. If we hit at the link, let's copy it, and we go back to Postman. We paste it here. And after that, we have to put the code name, which is Perplexity. Okay. So now we have the URL set with the code name in, which is Perplexity. Now we have to add the headers and the body. So if we go to headers, we're gonna add the first key, which is content type, and then the value is application JSON, and we'll have to add the authentication or authorization head. So that will be authorization, and the value is test. This is what I set in my application variables, and I'll show you how to set up the application once you fork it in a second, once we do the testing and make sure it's working. Now we go to the body. The body is basically in a row format. So we go to row, and it is in the same structure where we send the normal body. So we can use the test here as the body. So I had the test, your helpful assistant. What is the top news today? So let's change it so you don't think it is something just I'm picking up from a database. So I changed it to what is the weather today in Dubai. Okay, now we should send a request, and what we receive should be the ID. So let's hit send, and it's sending the request, and we got invalid API key. So let me go back to the secrets here, and this is the API key that we should, and it is test. So let me go back here to headers. Okay, so I used a capital T test. So let's put a normal T. Okay, not a capital T, and let's hit send again. Okay, I found the error. I went to the application. I wasn't highlighting this header in my application as authorization. It's actually X API key. So let me send again the request, and we should get an ID now. So we have a success here. You can see it, and we have the UUID. This is our ID. And this is what we're going to use for the second request to get back the response. So now in our database, there will be a record created. I don't know if we can see it. If we go to the database here and we go to the endpoint table, we will see, yeah, there's a Perplexity request with a UUID, and it already got the response. So it has the response in here. Now we have to recover it from this database. So this is what we're going to do. And the way to do that, let's go back to Postman. It is the same request. We just add a backslash, and in this backslash, we add this, which is on Zapier or Make. It can be this response will be a dynamic kind of value. So you pick it up from the first request you made to the application, where you get this response with the ID, and you just add it to the second one. So this is the ID. The second one is a get. So this is a get request, not a post request. So you have the same URL, backslash, the code name, which is Perplexity, backslash, the UUID that you get from the first step. You will have to put a delay in the middle to make sure that it runs the service, gets you the response, takes its time. I put it from 2 to 3 minutes. So do whatever you think is needed for your application. But unless it's something that is time sensitive, you need it in seconds, I think this is good enough. And then the only thing we need to change here is we need to remove the body, because now we don't need any body. It can be a blank request in terms of body. We hit send now. We should get the request here, and we have the request. And you can see here the content. Let me just take this up a little bit. This is the request. So you can see here, it's giving me the details about the weather, 26 degrees Celsius. I know at this time in winter, it's beautiful weather here in Dubai. So wind speed is so and so. Visibility is giving me all the information, and it's giving me the citation of the resources and everything else I need. It's coming in that response as if I sent Perplexity directly. The only thing here, I'm avoiding that kind of timeout error. So both requests, when I send them to my application, I'm getting an instant response because the work is being done in the back end on my own application. It's not happening on Zapier or Make or even Perplexity, because even Perplexity itself, if it fails for whatever reason, and usually that doesn't happen, the application will automatically try after 1 second again 2 times. So total 3 attempts to get an answer. And finally, if the 3 get an error, you will get a response with an error on the 3rd one, which reduces the probability of having any error or the timeout error significantly if you have your APIs done the right way. So before I go and I show you how to actually fork it and use the application, let's go back here. It's a really nice application, a really nice interface. You can add as much as you want. It will become your hub for doing API calls, especially the ones that take time. And you can edit and you can even delete. So if I hit delete here, I will have a confirmation because deleting is a big deal. I hit delete, I hit OK, it's deleted. You'll go back to the dashboard. This is how the dashboard will look for you when you start your application, because obviously you don't have any endpoints added. You'll have to add your endpoint here, put the details necessary, put the body for the testing. So it has to have actual data, and then start testing and trying out how the application works for you. You can set the API key from here. If you're not happy with that, it's actually better, at least for the first time, to set it within Replit, which I'll show you now. So when you go to Replit, I've tried my best to make this forking process the easiest possible for you. Maybe I'm not that good to manage things for the database, because you're going to have your own database, and that can't happen on the forked application. So if we go to secrets, you're going to have all of these secrets as part of the application. Do not worry. Do not get overwhelmed with all these secrets. The only ones that you have to set in place are the API key and the password. Set whatever you need. Now, you can use the same, you can use different. The password is the one that you use for the user interface to actually access the interface of endpoints, add endpoints, edit, delete endpoints. And the API key is the one that you will need to send that request to your application and get an ID, and later on use a GET request to get the actual data. And remember what we faced in the testing. This, when you use it in the request, you'd have to have X API key, not authorization or anything else. So you have to set both of them here, and then you have to hit run. You're gonna face an error, okay? Once you face an error, the error will be because all of these database related information, which is necessary for you to run your own database, are empty. When you fork this, all of this, what you see here, all of these will be empty, blank. And it will expect you to enter a value. Do not enter a value for the database. You can just save them as they are. Add a value for these two on the top, the API key and the password, and then run, and then you'll get an error. Copy the error. This is the best way. I tried it for myself, at least, for you to replicate the project with least or no problem. Copy that error that you will get in the console. So you'll have to go to the console. You will see the error here. Copy that console, go to your Replit agent, and paste the error. Tell it, I have this error. I need to install the database. Please address it. Keep everything the same. Do not change anything in the application. Run it. It will create a database for you, and it will fill up all of these values in secrets for you. So you can mention to it, just to be sure that all of these variables are already in secrets. Just please add a database, add the values for these secrets, and run it for me. Hopefully, from the first time, it will run for you smoothly. Once you have that, you should, in the web view, actually when you run like I do now, you should see the interface where you actually enter the password, or if you already entered the password, you'll go directly into the dashboard where you have, you can enter the endpoints and see other things. You can see it, the options here, dashboard, new endpoint, and set API. So it's all dynamic, by the way, so you can even view it from your mobile. If you are serious about this application, you'll have to deploy it through Replit. I don't think it will work through just running it here and using that longer application. I have deployed it myself already, and I'm using it now. And I have made a document trying as much as possible to help you to basically start it in the right way possible. So this is the start here document, so you can go and read about the these values of the database and just trying to solve it. The best way is what I explained. Just run it, get the errors, give it to the agent. The agent will fix everything for you. That's the power of the agent. I'm just saying it could take a couple of tries. I would say 90% from the first time, but it might take more. Be detailed in your prompt to the agent. Again, tell it, this is the error. Add the values for me in the secrets. Don't change anything about the application. And I think you'd be good to go with this application. Now, last but not least, it's an amazing application. It is super that someone like me is able to build something like that and share it with people actually and help them solve a problem that I didn't find any solution out there for. But the question is, what's the best way? What I've learned of building many of these things on Replit, even by the way, I use Cursor AI. I have a pro membership with Cursor. I even connect Cursor to Replit. It's that good of a combination. You can do things on Cursor, deploy things on Replit, or actually just do it on Replit. Sometimes I go one way, most of the times I go both ways. And the one tip I would start with when you do these things is your initial prompt. The initial prompt, especially to the Replit agent. So the Replit agent that kind of first built, really significant. So yes, you can prompt it again. Yes, you can go to the assistant. But that first instance, first request you send to the agent of Replit, I find from experience is really significant. So to build this, actually, I did it twice before and I had to scrape that REPL. Now, eventually what I did is I gave it much more time at the beginning while I was building the prompt. And just for you, I'm keeping the prompt, the original prompt, I'm keeping it as part of the Replit or REPL. So when you fork it, you're going to find this here. And you can use it on your own just to learn and play with the Replit agent. But this is just to show you the amount of details I had to give it to really make the agent understand the idea that I want, the logic that I want, for it to build as closely as possible to what I'm looking for. And really, this big prompt, it's a big one that took me some time to develop with the help of AI. So I was working with ChatGPT just to improve the way it is, but eventually I had to do it manual. So I did some rounds with ChatGPT to really make it comprehensive in terms of describing it to an AI agent like the one Replit has. But eventually I had to open up the document, make sure that what it has reflects what is in my mind. And even at the end, I did one interesting thing is using normal text, I showed the logic of how the app works. So basically client to app, what will happen in the back end, what will happen in the front end. So I just made somehow like a diagram of logic just using keyboard text. Read it, read the way I put it together. This is one of the most critical steps in building an application, the initial prompt. Later on, as you build more things, you'll have to learn how to interact with the agent and with the assistant and when. These are different. Both of them are equally powerful. But with time, you will modify the way you interact with them. And you can see this is the new assistant they have, and this is the agent. So you can see I have probably here some work or still blank. It's a blank one. I have maybe an older one. But basically, this is the agent where you go and ask it to do big things for you. And the assistant is like your developer who's a professional sitting beside you, answering your question, doing small things for you. Helping you think and solve problems. This is the way I think of it today. The agent is that like geek, colleague of yours who's a developer. If you ask him to do something, he will go and he will bolt and start building and probably will not communicate as well as the assistant. So you'll have to play with them in the right balance to get the best outcome. Nothing happens from the first time. It's a game of some sort. I enjoy it to build. Sometimes it gets frustrating, but unless you do it for yourself, you will not learn. So in the description, you will find a link for the template, for the Replit template. You have to know for you to be able to fork this, anyone can do it, but for you to run it, because this requires a database and might require working with the agent. For the database, it is guaranteed. You cannot run a database on Replit without having at least a core membership. So you're going to have a membership to actually use this. Nevertheless, you can still fork it, take the code, place it on something like Cursor, ask it to get it to run for you. You'll have to figure out how to link the database yourself, and hopefully you'll get it to work. And you might do it somewhere else, maybe on your local machine. I think you can do it just by a couple of prompts. For me now, I use Replit more and more. I don't have the time to actually spend more time than I already do on deploying things on platforms. So I just do it on Replit. It is just so obvious for me and so easy for me. I don't have to think about it. It's not something now part of my thought process. I just build and deploy. I don't think about how deployment happens. So this is why I prefer to work with Replit. I can maybe build it somewhere else. I've built things on Google, on Azure. It takes some bandwidth to do on top of actually the trouble you go through to build these kind of applications. So I did it on Replit. The code is there. I hope you can figure it out if you want to do it for free somewhere else. But definitely, if you're on Replit and you're a paid member, it will be nothing for you. You can build it and deploy it quickly and start using it in your automations. The code is there. Please fork it, even for free, and try to connect it. I'm sure you can do it. Just give the code in chunks to Claude or ChatGPT o1. It will give you the way to run commands on your local machine to set up that database and fill up all of these values that you need to run this application. It's no problem. I'm pretty sure it's just a little bit more of a headache. And then you can decide to deploy it to Azure or Google for free if you want to do that. And if it's this is an API call kind of thing. So usually it's light application. Probably you're not going to be charged on those platforms anything of any value whatsoever. So I hope I gave you what I promised, a solution to the timeout or some other type of error kind of problem that we face in our automation. I'm excited about it. It's making my life much easier. I'm excited that I'm sharing it with you. I hope it will help many of you do more complex automations without hesitation, and you use this application or concept to go around the timeout headache that we talked about at the beginning. I hope you got value out of this video, not only by using the application, the concept of how to build such an application, test it, validate it, prompt, the initial prompt, and just enjoy it altogether. If you did see value, if you did enjoy that, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. It's for free. Just makes me smile a little bit when I see those subscribers coming in. Write a comment. It's actually the most important part for me to engage with you and build that community of people like me who do not know how to code and are actually building automations and complex things because of the power of AI that is wielded by most of us now. And with this, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Subscribe to Daddy's channel. Give me the mic.